Like, I have no voice. Okay, there we go. Actually, I am kind of missing my voice and some hearing. I went to a concert last night. It was a Red concert, and so if I ask you guys to repeat things constantly, it's because of that. I've actually done paid work in several media. Let's see, we've done video games, films, cartoons, but just short cartoons, nothing on TV yet. Role-playing game books, comics. So I'm kind of spanning the whole gamut, and that also means you probably haven't heard of me yet, or most of the projects that I worked on. Although you've probably heard of some of the companies that I worked for. Discovery Channel, Zenescope Entertainment. I did a little graphic novel with Nia, a couple of them for Shark Week, so that's kind of cool. And then I did write for Thunder 11, who is the writer of Sharknado, so I did some writing stuff for him. So you guys have heard of those projects probably. Pretty soon you'll be hearing more from me. Yes. I like to work on my own stuff too, and I like what you said about the research, because I get online and research a ton for my own stuff, especially for like just even dialogue. Like, how do I get different voices? Because now we have a whole global world. So I think not only is technology impacting the generation, but it's impacting what they're exposed to. So they're exposed to a lot more. We can reach and get on the internet and see films from Japan, or we can see manga. That's kind of amazing, and I think that's impacting the content that's created, and also kind of what people expect from the content that's created. So I thought that was an interesting thing that you mentioned about the research. It's not just research, but also it affects what people are exposed to. Something else I found interesting, I don't tend to think of, ooh, I'm going to market my stuff for Generation Z, or Generation Y, or whatever. I tend to think, I'm going to market my stuff for this age group, or whatever the client asks me to target a lot of times. So this is interesting to me to find out kind of what people are thinking about Generation Z. And my thought was, as I was researching it a little bit, so I look smart on the panel, I actually found that some people would say, well, Generation Z is this age range, and some people would say it's this age range. So there's not a consensus from what I could find online. Some said 90 to 99, some said 90 to now, some said 2000 to now. So we're going to have to probably define that. But for me, I think what's happening is technology is moving so fast. I think our generations are going to become shorter. I think it's going to find people much quicker. And the people who had the iPad, and then people who had the Google Glass, and people who have whatever's next. So I think that's going to impact us a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, so we're queued up here. So let's talk about, things are moving fast, and I've heard when we were speaking earlier, before we started here, a lot of conversations on how studios are kind of above this, and they don't really understand the market, they don't understand the audience, and they're maybe out of touch. Let's discuss where, as independents, we can have access to those markets, and what we can do using the technology, or using, the online world, or using the advantages and disadvantages of a fast Google search. How do you see your market? Like Sam, you have direct access to your fans, it sounds like, who are coming to you and integrating with your stories and what you're putting out there. So what is different now with the instant access of the audience?
Well, for one thing, submissions from people, that can come directly to us. And a side of what we've recently done is there are independent companies that will print your comic if they deem it's worthy and professional in a certain sense, and they take a certain charge for setting that up, and then you make your money. The thing that's really hard is distribution. And our Monsterverse is, because we're lucky, my cousin is the publisher and is such a talent, so well known, that got us in with the big comic company, which is Diamond. Now, having said that, digital kicked in, or with Comixology and different companies' platforms that distribute. And Comixology is really going to surprise it. That's really where it's taken off, where we found things. But we've got a new website that's getting ready to kick in. We had to have a better website for this world out there, compared to what we had. And these people are coming to us now bringing books. And I've just seen, one's called Wilder, which is a werewolf story set in World War II. and the other one is called The Devil's Dog. And these are limited, but we have the in with Diamond Distribution to get them distributed. They couldn't have done it on their own. So you still have to jump through hoops and stuff to get things out into shops and things. But what's really nice is we're connected with Comixology and Comics Plus and these things. So these guys' work will end up, and our work ends up digitally out there too. Now, as far as interaction goes, I'm old enough that I like old-fashioned meet people at conventions and things like this, but we have a wonderful artist named Lowell Isaac that brought something to us, and it was all via the internet, and he's amazing, and we're going to be using him on more things. In the 4 years that we've been together, had the company rolling, things have changed so fast, and then your markets and discovery and all that. Something that I really am very interested in pursuing is the children's book market. Neo had this idea, if I'm quoting this right, that was originally something for animation you wanted to do, but you then turned around, self-published it, made it an e-book, and if I've got this, we're friends. And I think it's an excellent example of what's going on. And he put it out there and distributed it, and it was free at first. Okay, these things, and then that got news and people interested, and then boom, that's when your money, you begin to offer, the pricing and the different things that you can. It is changing so fast. When I think about how we went up with PBS, then we broke down the issues into panels to show up on smartphones, and then tablets popped in and it completely flipped everything. Where well, you can still have the panel breakdown, but PBS, and there's different platforms you work in. There's a company called Mindfire online. I'm very interested in what they're doing. I'm going to use them as an example to kind of get back to what we're talking about here, and that is Mindfire takes like a comic and breaks it down, but they add sound and effects and music, and it's interactive. As we've been discussing, you click on the scene and bring the dialogue up, the word balloon. The music is looped so that'll, as long as you stay on the panel, you can do that. The interesting thing about Mindfire to me is, I saw this, I downloaded their things for free. It was all for free. I've got it on my phone right here. But at Comic-Con, I was talking to one of their principals, and here's what they're doing. They will take your comic, and they will either give you the tools, and you'll build a Mindfire and put it out, and you get to keep more money up front right off the bat, or turn the comic over to them digitally, they'll build it, then they take more money up front and go out from there.
And how do they compare to Comixology?
Well, Mindfire is a motion comic.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, well, motion, but not so much like, okay, the guys can walk in the room. It just is it has a very interactive.
It's animatic.
Well, it is a motion comic.
Yeah,
it's more than animatic. Yeah.
It's a motion comic with sound.
But even some of the stuff they don't even really move. But
this demonstrates we don't even have labels for this new technology.
Yeah. It's changing so fast. And the fact that I downloaded Mindfire. An example I want to give is a good friend of mine has these two daughters who I'm turning into monster kids because I show them all the old horror movies and things they're into. But she was clicking around on my phone, and I was showing her, you look at comics, and she was looking. But when Mindfire came up, she was looking at that little comic. She was clicking, she's 11.
So that really has the interactivity that
and she goes, hey, I really like this.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to be on this, And Mom, can I download this on my iPhone, And she did.
So are you open to fan fiction, and what are you doing? Where do you see the direction of your properties going?
Well, I mean, right now social media obviously is the way to reach out to people. And the problem is, I describe it as like you're standing in a rock concert but surrounded by a million screaming people trying to yell at one person on the other side, or get the guy on stage to pay attention to you. Because it's so loud. You have to make such an enormous amount of noise just to be heard. And then you get that noise for like one day.
So it's 24/7.
Maybe two. You do some big campaign, You know, like with my book, I'll do a big thing. I'll come up with something, hook up with some bloggers or some different groups on Facebook, do a big campaign, get it out to a ton of people. The sales will spike for a day. The second day they drop off, and then by the third day it's over, and that's it. And I mean, that's a huge amount of work you put into that. You know, just
is there a residual effect to the fans that you've built, you know, from that
sure.
you can grow up?
The key with that, because it's in the novel space and it's a fantasy novel, is you have to have a series of books to keep people attached. And essentially, I mean, that's, you can sell the first one, you know, you do the 99-cent price point, and then you can sell them all for $5 or $10 a piece if people like the first one. But
so it's sort of the freemium
which
model.
is it's that. I mean, that's really the Amazon model of selling on Amazon, is to do a series. Start with one, span it to a lot. But I mean, ultimately, yeah. I mean, people want to communicate with you through Facebook, through Goodreads, especially for novelists. Goodreads it's like Facebook for readers. So it's a very interactive community of readers who are really, really into indie novels right now.
Now, and then moving to the interactive side of things, are you in a position where you can afford to create content in the same manner as a writer, or do you have to sort of fund the process with bigger type projects?
Well, it kind of depends, and I'm going to take away from me and just think in the bigger scope. It kind of depends on what your ultimate goal is with a project. This is definitely a thing the indies have over a lot of the major studios, which is why major studios sometimes have indie teams within them. If you just want to prove out a concept, if there's some new type of gameplay you want to do, you can throw together a demo or something in a very short amount of time, a week, a month, 3 months, whatever, and throw it out there to see how people interact with it, and then build that to a larger project if it works, or change it if it doesn't. So sometimes you can do it. There are some things that technologically are too big to do in that short space. And it's funny, when you're talking about the comic, I was thinking, do you remember the movie Big? The big thing at the end is he's talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had these computerized comics where you could choose it? It's like, that I can do in like a day, in an hour, on an iPad, right now, and it's done. And back then they're like, oh, well, we can't do that because it would be this huge expensive thing to have all this technology built for it. We already have it. And this is going back to kind of your original question you asked about indies. Part of the difference between being a big entity like a studio and being an indie is the big studios have already established business style, a process, oftentimes software assets, and they have employees that have to continue to be employed. So they're not as agile as the indies can be. A good example, even with big things that come their way, remember Napster? The major recording studios wanted to shut that down. The idea of digital music online, let's stop that. That's going to kill our business. Well,
big mistake, because then they handed it over to Apple.
Now you would be crazy not to have a digital version of your music available online. And some people put up their own YouTube videos, so you could watch it all day long for free, where before they were going after lawsuits. So they couldn't change it. Even things you wouldn't think about. This is one of my favorite fun facts. Way back when the phone companies were first releasing phones, they had an issue because they discovered that women were using the phone to call their mothers and their sisters and their friends. And phones were supposed to be for business. So they actually sent out little things talking about phone etiquette, that phones were strictly for business, and if you had to make a personal phone call to somebody who wasn't business related, it was supposed to be limited to no more than 15 minutes, because that's not what a phone is for. Nowadays, it's something like 80% of the phone industry is about personal calls to your mom and your husband and your whatever. So they didn't even know what their business model was going to be. NBC tried to kill Hulu once they realized it was hurting their existing business model, and now they've had to back away from that, because that kind of change and shift in your business model after years of establishing a profitable model is hard. EA, if they make, or Activision or anything like that, they make Call of Duty, a Battlefield, a GTA, that takes like 3 years to get a big project, hundreds of people. So if you're partway through the project, you have a great new idea, you can't really shift that much. You have to have too much planning in the beginning. If you're making a game that could be out next month, and you get through most of the month and realize this is crap, you could probably throw it all away and start all over again. And so that's really why indies have kind of that ability. They don't have the infrastructure. We don't have necessarily the set base of fans or technology assets or anything. So we have to have that interaction with our fans the way they've been talking about. Go on the forums, go on Twitter, listen to what your fans want, get feedback from them, and then establish more of what they like and take out what they don't. And one more thing, by the way, things like Zynga, those big social games, they have something called the Key Bucket, because a game is only popular for like 3, maybe 6 months. And then after that, you start losing more people than you gain, very slowly. So even though they are updating multiple times a day to react to their fans, you still can't keep it, so.
If I could just add something to that. One thing that has to be remembered, there are two sides to this. There's the provider side and there's the audience side. And unfortunately, those are the two important sides, and the content kind of services one or the other. Even though the technology has changed, the love of money has not changed. And what you're dealing with, and you're dealing against, and this is throughout the history of entertainment, you're dealing with companies and organizations that have become Titanics. And they know how they make money, quote unquote, that's what they say. They know how to make money. So it is the Titanic, and it's moving along. And then here comes this little tugboat, and it's trying to turn the Titanic. It can be done, but the Titanic does not want to turn. That's what the studios and networks and corporations, internet providers as well. The internet providers, I think, are the next wave for this, because a lot of people don't realize, we talk about the free internet. Who has free internet? Who actually has free? I pay for my internet. I have to pay Charter cable. I have to pay Sprint. I pay for that. And what I've noticed recently is that these companies are now providing certain content for them that you have to buy into. Yeah. ESPN is a good example. If you want to go to ESPN 3, okay, I'm on Charter. Hey, I get it. No problem. Right there. If I'm on another cable company, I have to pay into it. They're becoming little mini networks because they are seeing by their own research that there's money to be made on an individual level. So when you are dealing with as an independent, you have to make a choice. You want to do this for money, or you want to do it for your love of doing it and your interaction with the fans, and hope that will move you somewhere else. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, the first thing that's going to happen when you do have success, they're either going to squash you or try to buy you out. And you have to make the decision. It's interesting how a lot of the people who have had success in branding themselves have done it because they've basically gone like that to the establishment. Because they're not in it for the love of money. They would love to pay their bills. But they realize there is actually a time investment to this. id Software, remember id Software? Yeah. Okay, Doom. Yeah. They first came out with Doom. What an awesome 3D engine. Oh my gosh. Now it's arcade, right? That kind of stuff. Yeah. But their first level was free. They gave it out for free because they knew the technology they had was so good it was going to hook people. Then they would sell everything like that afterwards. And they became hugely popular. They were like making money hand over fist. And they got bought up. Bigger corporations started saying, wait a minute, there is money there, let's go grab it. So the corporations, though, have not figured out exactly how to control this. They don't know how to control the independent spirit. They know how to throw money at it. I was brought in a while back over on the Disney lot. There was a small company, which was a digital company, that was not associated with Disney. Legally was not. They had an office there. And it has to do with a lot of legal reasons, unions, and things like that. But they were there to develop online web series content. And I went to talk to them about a particular project, and they were telling me about this guy who had done this special, either Star Wars or Star Trek independent thing that he had done, and it was incredible and amazing. They had grabbed this guy, and they had hired him, and they were sending him off somewhere on the East Coast to make an entire series. And I was familiar with the project they were talking about, and this person had used probably 80% of stock footage that he had gotten from whatever movie or series he was doing. The rest of it he had generated with his friends. They sent him off to do an entire series with a budget of $40,000. An entire series. And I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? That is impossible unless you grab a bunch of people and do it in your backyard. And if you do it that way, you're never going to be able to recoup it from a studio level. That company fell apart because the studios and corporations have not figured out how to monetize this. So when you talk to the, as we call them, Generation Z, you have to look at exactly what it is they're pulling in. That's why talking to the fans is important. That's why this interactivity, as Sam was talking about, that is extremely important. You can't let them guide you, but you have to listen to them because ultimately they're the ones who are going to brand you. If you do something and it doesn't become successful the first try, you will be remembered for having done it, and they will look for you again. And eventually, without even trying to become successful, one day you'll wake up and you'll say, wow, I go outside and people come up and ask for my autograph. I did something. But that's really the only way for people to become content providers on their own. You've got to kind of like look at the rest of the world and say, all right, basically, if you pay me a lot of money, I will do what you want me to do. But until then, I'm willing to hold out.
So in discussing then the direct access or listening to that audience, social media is certainly a big part of this. So let's bring you in, Shaene, here and talk about how are you leveraging social media for your properties or your ideas? And and how do you see an independent starting an idea, and anyone can interject then, Shaene, in reaching out to your audience through Facebook, through Twitter, and of course now it's Tumblr, right? It's like people are Tumblr crazy, and it is, I think, if you want to talk about Generation Z, I think that is Tumblr, right?
Actually, I could get you some stats on that.
Okay, well, that's important. If you can do both at the same time, we could really be impressed.
Social media, I'm learning. Actually, my social media guru is sitting 2 doors down there. And I talked to Neo, and I learned from Neo a lot about the social marketing. But really, you learn it from all of your friends. I mean, you kind of find out what everybody's using and what's working for them. And it's really important just to get the word out, tell people what you're doing. For example, if I'm working on a project, I'll post that I'm working on the project, and that makes sense, right? I've had friends that have known me for a couple of years that go, oh, I didn't know you did that kind of writing, after they found out I was working on a specific project. And one friend recently asked me what kind of writing I do after seeing a project that got posted. So now they're kind of interested in a way that, hey, maybe they'll want to hire me, or maybe they'll want to collaborate with me on something.
So your day-to-day activity is somewhat of a job referral process.
Kind of, in a lot of ways. And it works really well because you get to interact with people, and that's what I care about. I care about the people, and I get to meet people, and I get to interact with them. And for me, it's fun. So it's not like a job for me day to day. But it does work. I worked on the bands that I went to last night. One of the bands I follow on Twitter, and when I started following them, a couple days later, I got friended. What do you call it on Twitter? You got twitted? I got followed. I got followed by this other band I'd never heard of, and look, free download music. And I look them up online, and I get free download music. I started downloading the music, and sure enough, they were part of the warm-up bands for this band that I went to see last night. And sure enough, I went and bought their CD because, well, wow, they cared about me. They wanted to interact with me.
Successful marketing.
And I got to get the guy to sign it.
If they were following that you were into certain things, okay, maybe you'll like this.
Maybe I'll like this. And it worked. And I did like it. They did really well. They had the job of the first warm-up of the crowd. And I can't believe they did it. It was a really, really tough crowd, it seemed like. So it's pretty cool.
You may.
Sure.
There's a very important point in that story because they let you see what their work was like, and then you were interested in buying. I tell people sometimes, if you're hungry and you need food right away, to your left is McDonald's, to your right is a thing called Terry's Food. Most people are going to go to McDonald's because you've never heard of Terry's Food. You have no idea what they're serving, how it tastes, or how long it's going to take to get your food, or what it costs. You don't know any of the stuff. You just know it's called Terry's Food. So you know they have food, but what about it? McDonald's may be 1,000 times worse tasting compared to Terry's Food, or it could be 1,000 times better. You just don't know. It's not that it's a great place, but everybody recognizes what I'm going to get when I go to McDonald's or any other fast food major restaurant. If they don't know your work, why am I going to pay even 99 cents to download your game when it could be complete crap, and I know I can go buy it from someone else and know what I'm going to get? So you have to, like Stephen was talking about, you have to establish that kind of branding so that people just know what you're doing.
And then heard how many people say, oh, I don't care what Joss Whedon does, I'm going to watch it.
Yes.
Sure.
There's ultimate branding right there.
And I'd like to follow up on 2 points. One about the studios like Dinosaurs, they can't move fast, or the Titanic. Friends of mine over at a company called Prime Universe. They do a lot of work with video game properties. They did Hitman, which was not a great movie, and they admitted, but they rebooted it because it's coming out again. They filmed it. They went and sold a a series to machinima. And the way he described it, Scott described it to me, he said, Sam, we spent years on getting projects with the studios happening and all that. We went into machinima, which is, by the way, a gamer's web channel for those out there in the audience that may know or not know. And it has subscribers that are into games and things and are nerdish or whatever you want to, or nerdy stuff. And it's a direct mark. I mean, it's boom, you're jacked right into it. So they went in and pitched this idea, and they said, great, let's talk about it. And he said, they got a call later. They said, great. Now, they walked in with a graphic novel, and they had an attachment. They had the director of Troll Hunters, the Norwegian guy, do it. So they knew he could do it, you know. And then there's Prime Universe is a company that's well known, or within these quarters. Okay, here's your $8 million. When can we have it? And he said, we've been dealing with studios, we've been doing all these things. No one could move that like that fast before with these things. And they'll become maybe dinosaur or giant Titanics or Titanic ships at some point. But right now, they have the money, they have jacked into the advertising and the market, the whole thing like that. And another thing I want to follow up on, and this is very interesting. You started this a while ago. And this is, technology started out as a boy thing, a guy thing, and men that run business, okay? But what I find very interesting and fascinating in watching this evolution of where we're at now, and it's kind of funny because Renee put this on, and Renee's one of my former students. And I learned way back, Renee, back in that time, is my yearbook, I put the girls in control. They did a way better job than the guys did. I mean, they were focused and together. And then I taught with wonderful female teachers, amazing people. Now, the internet and all this technology, what's happened is it's gone from the boys playing around with all this stuff. You mentioned the phone and these things, and they're changing. That use of the technology is an amazing change that women and girls and things have brought to this. The tablets, a huge growth in children's literature, growth, youth tapped into, I think, a huge part of all kinds of things like this, you know, with this character that you've created, the animation is, that's really changing things and how the old boy network, whatever you want to call it, has altered. And I think Generation Z and this audience that is actively getting in and sending, they're happy to send you information or get involved in things like that. That's very interesting. And because we do horror, but we're not really gory slash-up horror. We're really kind of throwbacks to the classic horror. But what I love about what's going on is the girls love what we're doing. It's suspense. It's telling a story. It's having a character. They read. They're into it. And let's look at the films that have been popular in the last few years. Well, Renee was in Xena. I mean, it was a huge change, a sea change in that idea of the action genre and the stars and characters. Now with horror right now, the biggest audience for horror in our film world is the female audience. And I love that because I get to do the more suspenseful, I think better story-driven and good characters because they're out there and getting involved and driving a lot of this market. And Del Toro knows it. Mama came out, you know, was made for about somewhere between $10 and $15 million. And a ton of money. Purge, The Conjuring, all these things. They're independent. They're independently done. I mean, Guillermo may be big time, but he's still incredibly independent. I don't know, that guy must have a clone or something. What he's doing. But I think the nimbleness of independence, to be able to move with this sea change that it's just so rapid and happening, and that I go back to the greatest we're at. And I think of Macho and the men, they've been through this horrible experience, which were huge changes in the story in the film. I mean, their land and everything moved and uprooted and taken around. And Pa says that, Ma, we couldn't have done this, without you. It's just been it's been so horrible and awful. And she says, she says, Pa, a man, things happen, and it's like a jerk. It's like a kick. You go along and these things happen, and suddenly, you've been kicked by something or something, and you're upset, or you go with it. A woman is like a river. It moves, along, and sometimes the river dries, or then sometimes you turn or whatever because there's something in the way. But the river keeps flowing and going around, with this.
So we need more female politicians.
I'm just saying that's right. That's your changing Generation Z. That's where we're at. I think women and girls. I say women and girls. I say because
can I ask you?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
Selfish question.
Go right ahead.
What age range are you finding that when the women outpace the men in fans of horror for movies?
Well, first off, and this is unscientific, but I do this all the time. I go to movie theaters that are more working class to watch films and things that are going on, and I talk to people. Hey, what'd you think of that film? And the Woman in Black, which is been around forever, but they finally did the film with Daniel Radcliffe, and I was fascinated by sitting in that audience and hear what people are acting and all this stuff, but then started watching the movie. And that's really an old-fashioned film in a sense. It's very suspenseful. Nobody jumps out with a knife and chops anybody up. Anyway, leave the theater, and I've been to see other movies, Insidious and all these things. I see a lot of girls and women there, and I talk to them. I have moms with daughters. And did you like it? Tell me what you thought, and Women in Black, it's not like anything I've seen. It didn't have any, no gore, or no knives and bloody, and so everything that's old is new again in a sense. And that's the neat thing about this new content, and I think Conjuring and all these things are. And I noticed a lot of, like when I went to see Mama on a Saturday, Century Theater over on Victory, the biggest theater they had, and it was hot at that time. I'd only been out about a week or so. And here's what I saw. Tons of junior high girls, and I know them because I used to teach junior high. They're there. It was an audience filled with that. But there were boys, because the girls were here, there were parents that were there, along with it all. And that was a PG-13 film. Let me emphasize that. For that market. So back to answer your question, think PG-13, okay? Like, it's somewhere a little lower and above that is huge and driving a lot of change.
So you talk about just real quick, the interest. In one of these articles, we all did the same research apparently, and it says, going forward, Z's will be looking for products and messaging that reflect their reality rather than which depicts a personal, perfect life. More serious storylines and documentaries that highlight complex situations will appeal to them. Entertainment has become darker, with dystopian and post-apocalyptic stories dominating the youth space. So it seems as though the reality of, everyone is the proverbial post 9/11 quote, right? So it seems like that is sort of seeping into some of the reality of younger women, which are also embracing more of these types of storylines.
Just real quick, The Conjuring.
You're not so sure.
The Conjuring came out. It was made for $20 million, and that's low budget, Hollywood. It was done by the director of Insidious. Okay. But it was real old school with its scares, and he really built the thing. I think he did a great job of what it was. But I saw an interview with the producer where he was talking about, or he was discussing it. They had 5 daughters in the film, based on this story. He says, now, if the studio had been doing this, they would have said, cut this down, merge these characters, do 3 daughters, or, save money, blah, 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 and these things like that. But we said, no, we want this, back to your thoughts on reality, and a world, and the kids that were going to react. There's going to be this range of, this kid will react this way, this one, this one, and this one. You'll have that, and they made no matter how fantastic the worlds are we're talking about in horror or fantasy or anything like that, what I like about Girls Bring to the story is they like a good grounding in the real world, with people and characters that they can relate to, And it doesn't have to be a girl, but I mean, real characters. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen with Carrie.
If I could just add something in real
Go ahead.
quickly, this is going to happen.
I just want to answer the question.
Oh,
All right, we'll go from
It's not
Stephen to
generational.
No.
yeah.
Great.
I'll expand on that. Fred.
Okay, yeah, I can actually lead you back into that, so you can expand on it. Interesting things as far as technology is concerned. Research has shown that actually women, girls, females, have actually a better facility for technology than guys do. It's because guys become fascinated with gadgetry, become fascinated with it, like, I can do this, I can do this, wow, I'll do that. Women tend to approach it like, what does this do for me? How does it make me feel?
Yeah.
How do I appreciate it? The reason why, and this is why I said I kind of disagreed with the horror, the dark dystopian aspect. I didn't actually disagree with it. I disagree with it, that being the label of what I think is going on. Because what is going on is a lot of well-done suspense, horror. And I have to make a distinction. Anybody who stays up at night searching through Netflix to find a decent zombie film will know that most people put garbage out there that's just basically, let's see blood and guts.
Yeah.
Women tend to look for an emotional response, something that means something, and that goes directly to content, that goes to character, that goes to story. Right now we're in a phase of the horror, because horror has been one of those enduring genres, and that's one of the reasons why. But women respond more to that. I remember telling somebody one time, why do women bedazzle their phones? It's because really, honestly, they're bored with the technology. It services what they need. It makes them feel, let's just add a little bit more to it. Whereas guys are kind of like, oh, this is really cool. I got an app that can actually open my garage door from 40 miles away, which I do. I don't know why. But once you start getting more women, and I hate saying it that way, but I'll put the women's mindset into it. You end up with more quality as far as the content is concerned. I mean, okay, Terminator 2. You remember Terminator 2? Wow, big blockbuster, Driving Miss Daisy. Okay, which is a better film?
Terminator 2.
Well, no, it isn't, because Terminator 2 is dated. Driving Miss Daisy is never going to be dated. It is dated. Yes, it is. Look at the technology. I look at that thing and I just kind of go, I look at it and I go, wow, you know something? I could probably just do that in a few hours.
Well, let's talk about
It's basically technology.
Okay,
It's technology.
so let's talk about the evolution of dated technology, Grand Theft Auto.
But yeah, when I get down to yeah.
So I want to say, you're exactly right. It's back to content and how you handle it. So I say it's not generational because, for example, all of those cop dramas, the majority audience is older women. They found that by a lot. This is one of the interesting things about the situation we have with interactivity now, is that content providers can learn so much more about their audience in specifics than they used to be able to. And yeah, it's so interesting fact. Two of the largest, by far, most profitable genres in novels these days are, number one, romance, number two, mystery, which I think is why, because horror and mystery tend to merge. And romance. So yeah, and I was gonna say one of the most successful book series out there is a romance / detective horror series. So those books tend to do really well if they're well written. And I don't want to embarrass, a certain female family member of mine is really obsessed with this one series. And she's constantly telling me about the characters more than the situations. And then she'll talk about how the characters relate to each other when they're having sex. She doesn't give me the graphic details about sex. She gives me the funny lines they say and how they feel about each other. It's that kind of character-driven content that makes them interesting. And also on a note, I forget which one it was, Criminal Minds or one of those major kind of horror drama TV shows. The writers, according to the casting director, the main writers are all women, and they've said the same thing. All of them are moms, and they just think all of the horrible things they worry about happening to their kids when they're late from school, and write those as plot scripts. So it's an outlet for them, and probably for the moms that watch it, of, oh my God, what if this is what was going on, and how would that play out? But yeah, like, gender differentiation is kind of in market is a little bit of my specialty. So that is a completely cross-generational thing. And also to your point, interesting comparison, Twilight, Underworld, Both were movies about a vampire family versus a werewolf family. Twilight, massively larger ratio of women fans to male fans, and reversed for Underworld. And if you look at how those stories play out, Underworld is about a cat suit wearing hottie who's dual wielding guns, getting into all these huge super fights. Twilight is about a very plain Jane, emotionally blank, angsty girl who's dealing with the interpersonal issues with this vampire who's also very angsty and dealing with overcoming the transition between personal desire versus family loyalty. That's a female movie versus lots of explosions.
Well, kind of you're comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, you really are. Those are completely
You've
radically different stories.
They're radically different stories.
One's a book and one's a movie.
But that's just it. They're the same theme.
Well, the movie has 2 hours to develop the character, and you've got the book series which has...
So let's bring us back to our audience too, because we have a lot of people here, and does anybody so far want to ask a question that there is something that we'd like to see addressed? Go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm curious about being a female. How is for the females of the panel, what sort of content do you create? Is it for the female audience, or is it really just is it universal?
Okay, so the question was, what sort of content do you create? Is it for a female audience, or is it universal? And I'd like to also add to that, in terms of, as you're bringing content to market, where are you finding your audience as well? And how do you determine, based on your audience, how you're going to approach? Are you going universal, or are you going female? Because I think it's a very specific question to each content creator. So let's start on this end, and we'll move this way.
Let's start with me. I had an answer to the previous question that you read, and on this one. Yeah, well, let's see. I tend to enjoy action, slick action and sci-fi, so I don't skew female in my preferences, and that's not how I write. I mean, I just write what I like to read and what I like to watch. So
you have a universal approach?
Yeah, I have a universal approach, pretty much.
Okay.
And actually, though, I have changed a little bit. A lot of writers, especially when they first start out, when they write, they kind of write from their point of view, write what you know. And so a lot of my main characters would be female. But then as I learned more about the movie industry, a lot of female-led action movies don't do well overseas, just because it's a male-dominated culture over there. So there are definitely exceptions, for one. But I was told basically, hey, you shouldn't be writing female leads, so I started writing more male leads on purpose. So in that respect, I did change a little bit for that.
My garage app. Well, hey, just as a quick commentary, I downloaded Neo's book, and I had him sign it digitally. That's how technology has changed.
That's a brilliant idea, actually. If you download it, the author will log on and literally, just add that on. That's brilliant.
Well, the technology allowed it.
App developers, add that to your game,
Well, let's see. This is I'll be hopefully very brief on it. The fact that I ended up with being a writer was a complete accident. So I can never really say I kind of planned to write toward a particular audience. I have been given a very, very generous compliment by a lot of people saying that I write female characters well. And the first thing I say is, please keep in mind I have a Y chromosome. I'm not a woman. I can't do the nuances. I can't understand those nuances. But by the mere fact that I'm aware of it, actually I think does kind of separate me from a lot of the mentality that is behind male-driven female product. When I write, I tend to write toward a specific character. The gender is a part of the character, a major part of the character, but that's what I specifically go toward. I tend to enjoy writing the female character much more. Part of that probably is because I want to break the expectations that people have of female characters. I get very annoyed when I watch movies, films, webisodes, read comics or whatever, where you can read it and you can say, oh, here is the main character is a female. And then when you read it, you realize, oh my gosh, this is not like any female I know. You know, no woman stands that way. No woman turns her head back with her butt sticking up. The analogy I used to do was tell people was women's basketball. You ever watch women's basketball? I would not want to be on the court with them. They kick ass, and they do not take names. And it's like, oh my gosh, look at this. Have you ever watched a movie about women's basketball? You know, even when they're trying to appeal to it, because it's the male idea saturating this. Now, the person who first hired me in the business is a woman named Babs Grayhowski. She was the exec producer for Riptide. She and I have worked together many, many times. She's actually the first supervising producer on Xena, as a matter of fact. And she brought me in. That's how I ended up working on Xena. Babs was one of 2 top women who were known to write action adventure during the 80s and the early 90s. And what I realized by watching the way that she worked was that women have a little bit of an edge when they can write male characters because our society is saturated with that. The women just growing up, you're saturated with that. So you have a little bit more of an edge on that. Men don't. We have our basically idealized versions of women as we write them. So with me, you know, asking me whether I drive my content toward a female market, no. But I never have driven it toward a particular market. What I do is I do what I enjoy doing. And as I told people who have asked me, you know, how do you define success in this business? I say, you know, as a writer, it's when you're sitting there in front of the keyboard, you come up with a story, you come up with characters, and you're sitting there and you're writing, you go into that zone. Everybody here on the panel understands that. You go into this zone, time disappears, and the characters are talking in your head, and they're like, you got this stupid grin on your face, and you're just going at it, and you're going at it, you're just so focused on what you're doing, and then you just stop and you kind of look over your shoulder, and the rest of the world is watching what you're doing. That's success, but I can guarantee you, if you were looking at the rest of the world while trying to type, you would never have success. So that's kind of the way I've driven my life, and I've just been very, very fortunate that people seem to enjoy what I've done, and even more fortunate that they will pay for what I do. So, so anyway, it's
wonderful. Now, as we continue this conversation, and you talk about addressing, you know, the gender, also can you add in the complexity of the character today versus, and for Generation Z, you know, versus the past as well, so we can bring that into the conversation.
Well, to that, as I used to like to say, the 80s shows, a lot of the 80s shows, which he wrote some great ones, but, and actually he probably created the first, you know, one of the first really good female characters that you wrote, the way you wrote her. Where she was, I didn't create her. Well, I didn't create her, but the way you wrote her so well. I mean, most of those characters of that time were, I call the overcompensated female super character. She knows 7 forms of martial arts and has a degree from MIT, and she can like play the electric guitar and drive a race car. They have to give her an 175 IQ. They have to give her like all of these attributes of everything a boy would find awesome about a girl. And so you have this female character that's so over the top, and then it's like unbelievable. And then nobody buys it, and the show's just never really did well. So it was, but that's the way it always was, you know? So, like, I don't write for a specific audience. Unless, I would say, okay, there's the writing you do for love, and there's the writing you do for money. If the hub is paying me to write a script, I write it the way they want it, because they're paying me. And they're going to be very specific, and if I break any rules, they won't hire me again. So, and I want to be hired again. So, because I have rent to pay. But if I'm writing my own stuff, I had a project which was my novel originally. It got picked up by Henson Studios. They loved it. They wanted to do it as an animated series. We took it to Disney. They really loved it. And they went, but there's a girl in it, and it's an action story, and girls don't buy action figures. And it was like, really, is that the argument? So ultimately, they didn't pick it up, because marketing people said girls won't buy action figures. Even though we love everything about it, it's awesome, we want to do it really bad, but the marketing people say no. So...
yeah, nobody bought a Xena action figure.
Yeah, exactly. So then, you know, out of pure frustration, I go and just write the novel. That's why I wrote the novel. I was pissed. So I developed this story for a long time. All the rights were mine. I decided to write a novel. Everybody's like, oh, you should take it to a publisher. I'm like, no. This is my story. I love it. I've written it the way I want it. I'm going to put it out there, and people can decide if they like it or not. That's how I started writing Rise of the Alpha Hunters, which is now banned in Pakistan. But that's a whole other story. That's a whole other story.
Just a quick comment on something that Neo said. Something that we actually, in Xena, because we were in Xena, we were writing, you know, the arc of two characters and a journey, and surrounded with all this, like, you know, centaurs, you know, women giving birth to little centaur babies. There was a moment I remember specifically where our characters, and Renee probably remembers exactly what this scene was. I can't remember exactly what they were talking about. Zena and Gabrielle were talking about something that was very serious. It was kind of an emotional thing. And one of the comments we got back from Universal was, you know, can you sex it up a little bit? They didn't say it that way. So we didn't change any of the dialogue. We put them in a hot tub. They loved it. And that became a running gag. That we would have these great conversations in a hot tub.
Problem solved. You're really a problem.
That's the ultimate female content, right?
Yes, exactly. And everybody's happy. But I mean, ultimately, when you're creating, I mean, the studios, they can make Transformers, and they can make $1 billion. But they have to spend $200 million to make the movie, and $250 million to market it, and I don't even know if they actually make any money at the end. But they say they do, so we believe them. But, I mean, ultimately, the stuff that catches on the most seems to be the stuff that comes from the indies lately. And then the studios buy it up really fast, and then they have a Twilight, you know, as a novel that really wasn't going to get published. 50 Shades of Grey, which was fan fiction.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's really gross and bad. But,
Studios.
but I mean, ultimately, yeah, now it's being made into a movie, and you know, then they'll say, oh, it's a big franchise thing. And it's like, well, that came from an indie place. So, I mean, ultimately, it's like, if you can create stuff that connects to people, I mean, that's what you need to do. You need to focus on creating characters that are meaningful. That's the #1 thing, comments I get on my books and stuff, is like, oh, I really liked how the characters interacted. I like how they connected. You know, they said something to me and pissed off Pakistan, which is great. So, because they don't like strong females in Pakistan.
So is we're writing content for more interactive stories, and what can we learn from Grand Theft Auto 5? I mean, it's a big question, but here's a new type of world. I mean, it's evolved to the point where people are literally following their own stories and making their own movies from within that. So at the indie level, how do we embrace the potential success of that direction of storytelling?
Grand Theft Auto was a huge franchise. Once again, it's a $200 million thing, a $200 million marketing budget. That's been around for at least 10 years. And I mean, sure, I mean, maybe Brandi can speak more to this, because she's in game space. But I mean, Grand Theft Auto is not the only giant open world game out there. So, but that's for a certain audience, you know. But those aren't really story-based games. Grand Theft Auto is like...
They have a script that's this.
Sure, yeah, I know,
yeah.
But that's all cutscene stuff, just to keep you sort of moving along. You go into a place, you get a cutscene, and then you run outside in Grand Theft Auto, and you murder people, you know, steal a car.
But is that, we started here on the conversation of interactivity with fans, right? And how they helped, even you pointed out, how they helped to, you know, influence the story. Granted, maybe their version of it today is, you know, it's fairly okay, but soon there's going to be a company in 3 or 4 years that's going to have an engine online. You're going to go able to create your own characters and basically create your own GTA 5 within 5 to 10 years, right?
Don't they already have something?
Yeah, of course.
Xbox is putting that.
Constantly, yeah, the Microsoft's new world.
Yeah, I did that several years ago.
So as storytellers, and then I'm going to go back to Steve, because he talked about how there's hobbyists and then there's superstars, right? So, but I think there's something to be had about that interactive story and where that's going, and how your audience today, through social media, and almost instantaneously can impact that story. And so maybe you all have thoughts as to how that...
Let me make one clarification, because we want to hear down from here as well. There's a difference between, nobody's cracked this yet. They've been trying to do this, you know, a long time ago I worked for a company called Digital Pictures, based out of San Francisco, where I had to actually write a game for the Sega platform. Talk about how old this was. And that was when I was first exposed to flowcharts with common points, where everything has to come together so you can make your next choice and move along. Because at that time, you couldn't program an entire vast universe. What I learned from that experience, though, and we have yet to crack this, is that all these games, online or otherwise, most of them online, where you create your own character and you make your own decisions, that's not storytelling, that's an environment. It's a game show. You're putting yourself into a game show, but there is a certain definition of story that can happen around you, or that you can experience from a slightly detached area, but identifying with it emotionally. So there still is a distinction there that I'm not sure, and I don't want to put it in stone because everything changes, except for apparently that phrase. There's a detachment that is required for certain types of storytelling. And when you involve yourself in it, you're playing survival. You're doing that. You're not sitting back and watching Lost. Lost was a scripted version of survival.
Have you seen The Last of Us yet?
No.
That's
I mean,
immersive.
those are giant open world. There's like Fallout, there's Skyrim, you know, and those are actually games, I guess, where your choices do affect the story and the way it goes, like especially in like Fallout. You know, you can play good, you can play bad, you can join this faction, you can fight against that faction, and it radically changes the way the story goes. You know, and I think that's an interactive element that a certain amount of audience likes.
So Brandi, don't you believe though that the future storytellers are going to be the ones that are writing amazing stories, you know, that could be a perfect novel, but will be those will be the go-to writers for these interactive environments, no? In order to increase that sophistication in relationship with the audience and
Right.
the story.
So a couple things I'll address here, and I do want to get back to finishing answering Renee's question, but the way you put that, I'd say no. Do I think that we will in the future have fantastic writers using the medium? Yes. Do I think those will be translatable directly to a novel? No. I think the interactivity will, in definition of being such a great writer for that medium, be required. And you can't translate that immediately to a passive medium and have that same impact. If you're going to use the interactivity, that has to be a key aspect of it, or else you're not the great guru of that medium. You're a great guru of another medium and translating it. And I'll say that, so for anybody who hasn't played games, I'll give an analogy on this. This week I was talking to a high school kid, and she was showing me her homework assignment. And in this homework assignment, she has to read an article and then answer a bunch of questions. I was pissed when I saw the questions, because they were the high school assignment equivalent of what's called push-pull. They were leading questions. One of the questions actually said, taxation is a coercive device, and then led into, and this was supposed to be an assignment about environment for a biology class, and then starts talking about how necessary, population control is necessary, and then led to talking about how that should be implemented as limiting welfare for women who have more than one child. Give 3 more examples of how we should also do blah, blah, blah. The girl that was doing, her mother was there, and her mother was just upset. As I was reading, she's like, what? The girl saying, public. The girl was saying, you know, I was just looking for the right answer. I wasn't thinking about questioning what the questions were saying. And in that same way that you can be coercive with doing an assignment, you can do the same thing in a not evil way in a game. If I'm telling you, you're playing as a murderous mobster, go into this area, your goal is to kill as many people as possible. You know, I could do this as a coercive thing. You are playing an extremist who's going to go in and bomb abortion clinics. Do you think anybody isn't going to know what you're pushing as an idea if you get points and awards and maybe get a Medal of Honor for blowing up abortion clinics? That's going to be telling a very specific story, and if a player's doing it, they're doing it because they want to and they probably relate to it. But you could go into a story like GTA where there's a side mission about blowing up abortion clinics. And somebody who is really engaged in the GTA thing may not be thinking about what that really is saying or what you're really doing. It's why GTA 3 had the ability to run over prostitutes and get the money back. Nobody was thinking, it's great to run over and murder prostitutes to steal money from them. They were thinking, hey, I can increase this resource and this resource at the same time taking this action. So there's a whole moral argument you can have as to whether or not that was something that should have been in the game and whether or not that's teaching people something or other. But it's definitely encouraging the player to do certain actions that have a very specific meaning to them. So it doesn't matter how open world you have, you're always, as the designer, guiding the player into doing something. You're setting up the scenario in the same way that that article did. And so I want to go back.
So I saw something that's kind of funny, and to your point, the leading questions, there was a quiz, a math quiz or something. And it was like, you know, what's the product of 9 plus 6 for a young kid? And then the next question was, how did you get that answer? And the kid wrote math. So
There was a math question I saw one time that they were complaining about because it was about a married couple, so it was a word problem. And it was how quickly can the husband fix the car and how many pies can the wife make in the same hour? And the idea of what that tells the kids as far as if they see lots of questions giving those certain roles. I'm sure the developers of the math problem were trying to create defined gender roles, but it does.
And which is great because I think that is a pure example of how we, classify genders and how we can move out of that per Renee's question and how we can make not only our stories more universal, but really appeal to these evolving interests and characters.
What really frightens me is that we as independents and people that make these stories, and are trying to do the best thing we can, and trying to reach a market and all these things, there are forces in our world with a lot of money that are open to moving into this, whatever it is that's evolving, but they see that that's a way of reaching people. Hence, we have questions like you're talking about, which third generation teacher in my family just incites me to no end. That there are elements that, and they pay for think tanks, and they create universities and things. I'm not going to go into liberal or conservative, but I'm telling you, the money guys have an agenda politically to do certain things. Now, having said that, I want to get back to Renee's question real quickly. I mentioned I had these great teachers I worked with. I had these great students, female students. And that was a great learning process for me. I also had a great mother, and I had a great grandmother that was there when I was growing up. We had a great laugh, and I learned that women are a lot of fun to be around. Hence why I've never been married, because I just like being around a lot of women. And and I mean that as in I have Shane's a good friend of mine, and I love her and adore her, and all these people. God, I want to be limited. But then again, I was a product of James Bond and all that stuff too. So, but for Monsterverse, I've worked really hard to try to push in and get more female work in there. In the first issue, there's an artist I found on Facebook that was a woman. And I had to kind of like push, but I said, look, I want to get we've got all the boys working on this. I want to get a woman in this. Shaene and I have met. We've got a story that we've discussed and went through, and she's got an artist. I hope we can still get tone. But it's, I wanted Shaene in there to do some stories for us. I was real proud of, I wrote a story in the third issue of the Lugosi, Bela Lugosi's Social Great Book, which is an anthology book. And it's a mummy story. It's called The Mummy's Ring. And I worked with a great Hollywood conceptual artist and comic artist named Henry Mayo. And we were very concerned about this female character and what was going on, and these men, and manipulation and all that. And I was getting feedback from the Lugosi family and my cousin that was like, I don't know, this is, this and that. I had to bite my tongue and put my foot down to get what I wanted in this story. And Henry wanted too, which was this woman being manipulated. And we hopefully can do a sequel to this story. Because of the result at the end. It is a horror story, but it's a female character that's caught up in these events. So I know personally that I work for that in these things, and I can go back to, let's look at the genre. Terminator's been brought up. I mean, the female character in the first film has to become a survivor and work, and then by the second film, Jesus Christ, I mean, remember the way people just went, you could hear it in the theaters when you saw Linda Hamilton doing those pull-ups and those arms and stuff, but yet there is a wonderful, it's hard to write, but James Cameron, who wrote Aliens and did this, always works with these strong female characters. One of my favorite scenes in Aliens is, and I've also noted that many women that I grew up with that have children and all that, they love Aliens, and all that. Scorny me for that. And she goes back to get nude. The girl that survived. There was a kinship there, and you're a survivor, and you made it. And she go, oh my God, she's going to go down to the belly of the beast with all the eggs, the last thing in the world she ever wanted to do on this whole mission. She gets into the elevator. It's just a little moment. But I think it adds around. It's where she's got that flame gun and the bomb things that can shoot. She gets into the elevator and she's going after nude. It's like she's going into hell. She's literally descending into hell. And then there's a moment where Sigourney Weaver just leans against the back of the elevator and does this. And lets loose and sags like any human being would be, but a woman in this situation. And then the elevator's going up and she fills up. And it's that kind of attention to detail.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yes, please.
Just because this was something that was in one of the earlier incarnations of Aliens, in one of the earlier scripts. It was taken out, and I think it was a huge mistake. And you actually touched on it. In one of the original incarnations, it was brought up that Ripley had lost her daughter.
It's in the...
Yeah, the extended version, when you first saw that, it was cut out. And I remember when I found that out, I thought, I thought, oh my gosh, that underscores everything. And it doesn't overshadow the connection, because the connection still worked even without it, but still.
Well, that's the kind of thing that I hope, as both an editor and a writer for the company, and I'm a marketing guy, and all these kind of things, I hope that in anything that we're doing, and what I look for when I find work presented to us, is it's not a male or a female thing, but because it's a human thing that we're looking for to connect with. But let's be true to that kind of genre, that the sexes, and what you said about running people over and all things like that. It's like I don't really want to do that. It doesn't mean a female can't get killed in her story or can't be the villain or anything like that in our story, the horror character or anything like that. But the interactive change because of women and females getting involved in all these things, I'm totally open and want that to happen. Aliens proved, wow, they made a lot of money, and then they made even more money, and women could get involved and in on it with the guys. And guess what? It didn't hurt the guys, and it didn't hurt us. The girls were all having a great time with this sort of Twilight and these things. I don't necessarily care for them. I think they're very poorly written and all these things, but I don't mind the fact that women really like this, and it's got vampires in it and all that. It's not my vampire. It's a really scary, emo vampire, but that's fine. It's great because somebody then will go off and discover the scarier, cool, whatever stuff and things like that. So I personally want to see it. I personally want to work with female creators and people and see what they can bring to the table and collaborate. I want to. One last thing, our graphic novel series, Flesh and Blood, I think one of the things that really makes it wonderful is Robert Tennell's a writer on it, Neil Vokes is the illustrator, and Guillermo del Toro says phenomenal on the back, folks. Look it up. We'll sell it to you online at our Amazon store or whatever. But it's got your big-breasted vampire women from like a Hammer film, but there is so much going on, and the third volume just came out, and I'm just so pleased with what Robert brings to this whole idea. It's really great that he grew up on this stuff and has had all these years to think about it and didn't get to do it until now. He's an older, more open filmmaker and writer and all these things. And there's a nuance and subtlety and wonderful to this. And I know where this is all going. And there's a character in this that it's going to be really shocking that what this is moving towards. So, in the end, I think write what you want to write, number one. Write it, publish it. We have these avenues and things like this to do. Make the games and things like that. Look at number two, look at your market. Who are you writing for? And when we speak of women, who's reading more? Is it, it's not my brother. You know, I don't think he's read a book since he got out of college, you know, unless it's a marketing book or something like that. But you want to sell, you want to be successful, yes, consider, you know, women. In fact, it's so funny, I wrote a title. We were sitting there talking, I went, okay, that's an idea, and I put it on my little app.
What
I'm
is
going
it?
to forget this. It's called 50 Shades of Blood. I'm going to go off and do a story with this, I swear. What?
I actually already have that one in my little file.
You
got the writer.
Well, it's a
You got
race
the
now to
writer.
see who can get it out faster.
There's probably already a book on Amazon.
I'm sure it is, but mine will be the best on that. But yeah, it's like, why not, we must be aware of this market, and I'm hoping that the females, when I say embracing female, whatever, I don't want to make it like, oh, we're just writing for girls, but I think about, there was a New York Times article that came out about a year ago, and that's when I said, I'm going to come up with a just children fiction version of our stuff. And the tablet reignited kids reading like crazy. You know, a big part of that young market, who is it? It's girls.
So, yeah, I want to finish for your question. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, and I'll include your point on generation. There's no saying. You can please some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. I actually think that's wrong. You can't please all the people any of the time. There is no time under which you can ever please all people. Even something as simple as, hey, you shouldn't murder kittens is not something all of humanity can get behind. There is nothing all of humanity can get behind. And the thing is, because of that, you are always writing to a market. If you say you're writing to everybody, you are either writing for yourself and anybody who is exactly like you, or you are writing for a nebulous, cliche-based version of what your unconscious perception of the market is. When they do that, which is frequent, it tends to mean also other people who read this exact same thing, and your work becomes even more cliche. If you're writing to a market you don't understand, it's cliche. If you understand the market and you're writing for it, then you can start to hit it. And that's partly why having suddenly more women in an area opens the market to more women. They're writing for themselves, and that happens to be real women. Same with minorities and disabilities, anybody who's outside whatever is already established for the majority. When I'm doing games, do I do them for men or for women? It's dependent on the game. I actually have been trying to start a studio where my primary target is women, and I've had an incredibly hard time getting funding, despite the fact that women are about 50% of the gaming market. They don't recognize that yet. They're still ignoring that on the investor side. Oh, women don't play games. No, really, we do. Females play a lot of games. The differences in how I do toward a market is, I think, more important than anything else in games where the interaction is required, because it has to be a lot more than the writing. It has to be, it's teaching when you're doing a game. I'll give you an easy example. Difference between the male and female markets in general. Men and women have different eyesight. Mammals' eyes are made up of cones and rods, and men and women have a different ratio. It makes it so that males have a better view in the black and white depth space, and women have a better ability to decipher color. This means men tend to be better at responding to small changes in motion, and women have a better chance of noticing color changes. That's why a first-person shooter that is mostly about melee type stuff is easier for the male market, and shooters that are mostly sniper-based are easier for the female market. So even something as minute as that, even if I'm doing, okay, this is going to be for 22 to 23-year-old white males in Missouri, I still have to ask myself, what are they mostly about shooting with broad range or short range? Do they want to shoot, stealth, strategize? What is their main thing? You always have to niche down your market as much as possible to make something for them. So I have a good perception, this is my specialty, and I do like 2-hour lectures, I won't give that now, as to what the differences are in the markets gender-wise. But I will tell you one thing I think is very important for all of us, not just games.
And Generation Z.
That's what I'm getting at, as far as the new generation. Can you imagine how today's audience would react if you tried to make a villain character, or not even a villain character, just a dumb sidekick character where the only real thing that defines his dumbness is the fact that he's a poor black guy? How well would that be received? How about a guy who's a villain simply because he's obviously a pervert because he's gay? How well is that going to do in the market today? Now, how well would that have done 50 years ago? How well would the first one have done back in the 50s? Our perception changes. The current generation, they are more interested in more equality, not just in race and in terms of sexual orientation. We're now seeing a move toward needing equality and equal treatment of people who are transgender. We're also seeing a very strong, part of women coming in, as we've been saying, shift towards gender equality. More than just recognizing, oh yes, women can do what men can do, but look at the shows that are coming out now. Scandal, Once Upon a Time, both of them pass the Bechdel test constantly, which is determining whether or not there is two female characters who are strong, not pathetic female characters, that ever have a conversation about anything other than the main male characters and relationships with them. That so many properties, most properties fail that test, but we're starting to see more that pass it. And we had things like the GTA thing I mentioned. Those aren't going to be acceptable in the next 10 years. They would say that's horrible. Even Fable 1, which isn't that old of a game, one of the things you did in there was the ability to do bad things and become a dark character, or good things and become a good character. One of the fastest ways you could become a bad character was to get married and divorced. And you played as a male character. That was the only thing you could play as. You would get less bad points if you murdered your wife instead of divorcing her. Yeah, that was not probably an intentional thing, or maybe one of the designers was in a divorce and really pissed off. I don't know. But that's not going to be acceptable for very long. We are starting to see more of a demand for that kind of equality, that you can't treat women as a decoration. And there's a change in the perception, which will force a change in the market, which will force a change in content creation. Two very quick examples of perception changes. They've done lots of studies that are showing this is starting to slightly change. Most people will perceive a pregnant woman as incompetent compared to any other type. Yeah, as soon as a woman is known to be pregnant, there's an automatic assumption that she's gone. As soon as a woman is known to be a mother, she's less likely to get a promotion, she's less likely to get investments or anything else. And their perception of them is, oh, well, she just doesn't seem as competent.
And the second example?
Huh?
There was another example?
Yes, and the other example is, they did a study, this is really fascinating. They had a male and a female actress doing this scenario where they were a CEO or chairman of a board. In one of the scenarios, the CEO cries. In the other scenario, the CEO blows up and screams at everyone. They had both actors play the parts exactly the same way. They found that people highly respected the angry male because they said that he was taking authority and taking charge. Next, they respected the crying female because they said that she's so sensitive and caring and really cares about what's going on with her employees. They didn't like the angry female. They said, even though she acted the same as the supposed guy taking charge, she's a bitch who lost control of her emotions. The crying man is a pussy and we hate him. So men and women are perceived as taking even authority the same way in how they react to it. As we start to change those perceptions with the younger generation, it's going to change how our behavior goes.
So when you say start, it appears that we're in that. We're in Generation Z. It is a new perception. It is a new sort of more equality.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I think that, you know, this entire business, and bring this right back into the Generation Z thing, the access and where it's going. Nobody charted out this business. Nobody said, okay, let's get down to committee, let's talk about what we're going to do for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
This is like a funnel. The water falls on the top, and somehow it's got to come out the bottom. And you, at best, can swim against the tide, or you can take the tide with you, but that's what it is. It's not by design. It just kind of filters usually toward the money. That's how it's been in this country. What is happening, all this talk about the gender differences, it comes back to really, it's not, you know, it almost sounds like it's divorced from the Generation Z problem. It's not. Because one of the things you're finding with the technology is that a lot of the gender walls, a lot of the glass ceilings, don't mean anything in that particular community. They're still there. They're still going to be there, especially when you start getting up in the upper echelon and getting into the content providers. But, you know, remember, I don't know if you know the game Red Orchestra? It was a while back. It was a shooter game, and it was Soviets against Germans, and it was all the popular stuff. And I used to play that game, and I was one of the soldiers running around. And at one particular point, on the headset, I'm hearing everybody calling out because everybody wants to be a squad leader. And I decided the best thing for me to be was a sniper. So I'm just going to lie down. I got my sniper rifle, and I'm looking for this guy up here because he's been shooting down these guys. I want to take him out. And suddenly I start getting these wound hits all over me. I'm like, who the heck is shooting me? And I turn around, it's one of the soldiers of my squad. He's shooting me. And I die. And I'm like, okay. And then I get re-energized, and I come out, and I go to the same position, and this person is shooting me. And so I'm on the headset, and I call out to the person, and I said, you know, hey guy, get off of me, I'm on your side. The voice I heard back was a woman's voice that says, I'm not a guy, I'm a girl, get your ass off the ground and move. And I really went, that's awesome, but you're still killing me. But what's happened though is that there's a certain amount of assumption there that we have that the internet is still a male-dominated area. And the cool thing about it is that it's allowing women and other people to sneak in areas that they're not obstructed by the prejudice, they're not obstructed by the stereotypes. And when it really hits, it surprises people. It actually puts a little bit of a nodule up there. It makes you like, you know, suddenly you are noticed a little bit more because of that. But I think the result of all this conversation we're talking about, gearing toward a more female market, isn't really us as content providers pushing that market out on anybody else. It's the fact that this market has always been there. But what Generation Z now has is a more direct access to the content regardless of that particular orientation or preference or color or anything like that. I think that's how it comes back to Generation Z.
Great, great. And, but come on, what you're really saying is boys in Generation Z are stupid and we should be harboring our
Generation Z.
No,
We've always been stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then, so you're going to ask the question. We don't have time for everyone to answer, so I'm going to ask Neo to answer this question.
My question.
We're essentially out of time.
And it's okay if we go a little bit, but yes, thank you. My question is, it's sort of brought up from Brandi's answer, but the moral responsibility of creating content, from gaming especially. So does that ever, there comes a point as you're creating the story, and you know that there's an effect on the audience, and especially in the Generation Z, which is very open and impressionable to being in a relationship, so to speak, with the content provider. So when you, as a content person, are writing, and you hit that point of, there's a choice here I can make. I can go this way, which has some sort of moral accountability, or I can go this way, which serves the studio or the genre. How do you navigate that? And does it ever come up at all?
Okay, so we'll open up to everyone. And everyone, you have 30 seconds literally to answer the question. No, with due respect to the schedule and such, so please keep it short.
Well, if it's at the studio level, you do whatever they want because they're paying you. And as much as it sucks, you can fight against it, but ultimately they own it. So, but for me as an independent creator, yeah, I have to find that line, definitely. So there's scenes I've written in my books where you know, Shaene and I had an argument about one specific scene that she thought was way over the top, and like, no, no, no. And so, and I had to decide, you know, and ultimately it was the way a boy and a girl were relating to each other and having an argument and her hitting him in the face and stuff. I think that was the scene we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she punched him, and I thought, well, you know, this is kind of, this could be domestic abuse the other way. It's
Yeah, but we're talking about two teenage werewolves having an argument.
Yeah.
So there was a whole liking issue argument there, which Shaene and I did not agree with, but I had to sort of ultimately decide what was right and what was wrong. So, and there was a couple of scenes Barbara was like, oh, you're turning your girl too violent. I was like, really, Barbara? Okay, yeah, I know. So, I mean, ultimately, yeah, you have to decide what that line is and what's okay. And there's a couple of scenes in there, you know, in my stuff I've written where I've had to decide if I'm going to own it or not.
And it sounds like you're actually getting, you know, you're using little mini focus groups to really kind of be sensitive.
Oh, absolutely.
And Shaene,
yeah.
so what's your answer?
I was just going to ask you, so what was your final decision based on?
Ultimately, I had to decide what was, since I'm in India, I ultimately have to decide what I believe is right. So.
And Shaene, your answer to the question, morality and such?
Sometimes it's what's best for the story, because the story overall can teach the morality better than an individual incident. But for me, sometimes I might make a decision not to do something. I have some very dark stuff that I want to work on and to make decisions on soon, so it's going to be tough. You guys tell me how to make that decision.
All right, good.
Yeah, I think answering the how would just take way too long. You can ask me afterwards. But I will say, some something outside of the story or the game itself that is very impactful as far as not only the morality, but how your audience interacts, is the community. Because when we're talking about interactions and forums and fan fictions, all these things are important. You have to make the space feel comfortable and safe to everyone you want invited into it. If you're allowing people to say racist comments all over your forum, you're not going to have very many people of that minority in your forum. If you have people making sexist comments, you're not going to have very many women feel very comfortable there, or men if it's sexist against them. And part of that culture is created by the content. If you make this place feel like a fun, positive place for trolls to be, they'll be there. If you make this feel like a pro-misogyny area, you're going to get them. So you have to develop your culture in your content and then help grow the community in a way that allows that market to feel safe.
So your niche might actually force the morality issue and put you down.
A little bit, yeah, because if your niche really is people who are misogynistic trolls and you really want to make the money off of them, then okay, you're going to be driving out other people and you're going to be allowing them to do that.
But that's your niche.
But that's your niche. And at what point do you allow them, like how far can they go is something you have to kind of establish.
One of the things I like to do with the stories that I work on is, yes, you recognize these things and the world and how it is, and how perceptions are, sexual, class, whatever you put in there. But I really like to play off those and take you down a path and then, you know, and it's hard to do in today's world because Generation Z is a very sophisticated audience in some ways. They've been exposed to so much. And so I like a great story. My god is William Goldman, who is a great writer, screenplays to books, and or anybody else that's a great writer. And I really think, you know, you can have as you were talking about a while ago, these characters that maybe not be so PC, but hopefully you'll be able to flip and make something that's contemporary in understanding those characters and things like that. I've got an erotic thriller that I wrote, and I've been sitting on it for a while. And I only show it to a few people at a time, mostly women. Shane, I'll be sending it to you. You'll be that guy. And again, I'm playing with perceptions and things that are threaded in and out of the thing. And that's what's interesting to me is if I pull it off. So far, I've been able to pull certain things off, and I get patted on the back by females or whoever with something, and oh wow, I didn't see this or that, or what was coming on, you know, coming forward with that. But then again, when you're doing something like an erotic thriller, you're going to have sex and you're going to have things going on. How do I present that on the paper? You know, how do I present that for someone to read and view? And then, of course, the whole process of making it into the other medium that's going to be coming on, and that'll be up to a director. It's like, you know, it's just really hard. Towards the end, by the time the sex was really like here and there, it's like, I don't know how many times I had to edit myself and rewrite, you know, because you're working up a story. It's like, you know, just say, you know, it's this. He talks to her. He did this and that. Well, you got to make that acceptable. And I'll turn that over to Shane.
Well, for Generation Z, right? But
yeah. Well, why not? What are these stories about? The generation, they're much more sophisticated sexually as well.
That's true, but interestingly enough, the technology has made it so that erotica can be read wherever you are with nobody knowing that you're reading it. So, like, read it on an iPad, I can't. So yeah, I mean, that's something that's going to be impacting the way these guys grow up and what they read and things like that.
It's and also it's in general allowing that kind of anonymity and safe space where if you really think it's funny to talk about, say, domestic abuse jokes, you can do this without the necessary negative consequences you would do socially, because you're probably in an area online of other people who like those jokes.
And you're anonymous.
And you're anonymous as well. So you're getting immediate positive feedback in a social space, where if you did it in the real world, you're probably not finding those people at your normal interactions, and you get negative feedback.
No, and final comments from you, Steve? This is it? Everyone's weighed in.
Well, to that question, Renee asked about how you're making choices in morality. Everybody has a moral compass. We all do. Even Hitler had a moral compass. And ironically, to actually write Hitler correctly, you You have to acknowledge a moral compass, and you have to present that honestly to people to judge. I'm actually kind of the wrong person to ask that question about choices, because I will tell you that dealing with the studio system as I have for almost 30 years, I have confronted those questions. I have had studio execs, most of them have been great people, but I've had moral questions put to me that I absolutely refuse to accommodate. And I have walked out of offices and blown deals because I've said no, because I have my moral compass. And the one thing I would say as an overall thing, this applies to every generation, but something for Generation Z to keep in mind is that you do have a moral compass. You have moral boundaries. You have things that make up who you are. The moment you accommodate, completely compromise those, not make accommodations, but compromise those for a higher money or a higher position or whatever, you have now been bought. You have been sold out. You're no longer a part of Generation Z as we've been talking about it. You are part of the old-time structure. And I'm proud to say that I blew a $40 million deal one time because I was asked to do something that I disagreed with morally. And we had an argument in the office about it, and I said, well, thank you very much, and I got it. And the executive said, if you walk out that door, you're not coming back. And I said, if I walk out that door, I have no intention of coming back. And I walked, and that was it. And some people will say, oh my God, you blew a $40 million deal. It wasn't $40 million for me, it was the project itself. And I said, yeah, you know the really strange thing is? I slept like a baby that night.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for everyone who contributed your great questions. And, yeah.